Hey guys, Sen here. I just had one of my craziest raid weekends with some of the most impossible peak 2 shots and some of the most absurd non-default 1 shots, resulting in 1.71 million total loot and close to 1.9k raid medals. So I'm going to be breaking down some of the most mind-blowing attacks from the raid weekend, but before we get into that, I'm going to do a quick segment on the new trader shop. There's a couple new additions if you have not yet heard about them already in the raid medals tab. So Supercell just introduced a limited amount of equipment ore in the trader shop, so I personally recommend that you buy out the glowy ore and starry ore if you can. For 1300 medals, you get 100 glowy ore and 10 starry ore, which is worth more than a war win at max town hall 16. And after that, if you're in a good clan that still has some raid medals left over, I recommend that you buy shiny ore if you still are short on that somehow. You can buy some of those potions, like the lab potions to speed up your lab, as well as the pet potions to speed up your pet factory. Also, you can buy hero potions, power potions if you need them for war or CWL, as well as training potions to help you with farming. But that's my quick guide on the raid medal shop, and let's hop into the attacks. So our first peek is from a Legends clan. We're going to start off with a pack of split minions to try to get those 2 cannons on the approach outside of range and air defense, but you can see there was actually a bomb set to air. That's very uncommon. But that's also why I split my minions, just in case the rare off chance that there are traps. If you send them in different directions, they don't all get killed at once, and I still have 1 pack of minions to kill this 1 cannon, 2 rams up the left hand side, and a bar to try to get the spear thrower. There were some more traps set to ground this time, so I have to use another barbarian that I didn't want to use, and now we have to use another barbarian as well as a pack of minions to try to kill the spear thrower, and then those minions are going to go left, clear the trash buildings, as well as grabbing another cannon for me. There are so many little traps down here that are being so pesky, but we have cleared the entry very comfortably, and we have worked our way into the base. Now, this peak is very annoying. It's got a blast bow behind the corner peak, as well as a bunch of air defenses that stop you from trying to eye dragon snipe the peak itself. And you can also never get a good wizard bomb because all the defenses are properly spaced 1 tile away from the peak. So this base is extremely annoying with a deep super dragon and inferno towers that are going to stop any golem entry. With the moat around the inferno towers, my golem is just going to walk around and grab a bunch of trash buildings as the inferno tower ramps up against him, so that's not ideal either. So in this case, even though the Sparky chains are not absolutely crazy against this base, it's my only option. Also, Sparky is my comfort pick. I know I'm good with Sparky, so it's my best chance. So I send in the Sparky from down south, 1-shot all of those point defenses on the entry. Sparky will be tanked for by the barbarians and those giants. The rams, just to get her inside the base, and I try to use another giant to tank the blast bow, but it walks away from me. And I could not get an angle to tank the blast bow, so unfortunately my Sparky gets locked onto. But do not commit to your mistakes. Don't try to break through the wall and try to chip down the blast bow, because I don't want my Sparky to enter in from this corner. If I send my Sparky in between 2 inferno towers on the flanks, she is going to get absolutely torn to shreds, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I have to commit to my mistake, let my giant die on top of this wizard tower, and just let my Sparky take some damage, and so I can go in with my original plan, which is to send my Sparky right into this wall break that I created with the ram earlier, and have the Sparky go towards the inferno tower, go towards the giant dragons and giants, and then try to use a raise spell to push through everything. Frost on the peak as well as rocket artillery will make a lot of the backside a lot more manageable, and then before the inferno tower locks onto my Sparky, I'll use a bunch of rams to tank those inferno beams as well as try to pull traps. Because the rams have a ton of troops inside them, the inferno towers are not good at dealing with them, so those rams are much better than giants for tanking in this case. And then 1 giant finally on top of the inferno tower, because there were fences that let those enemy super giants come towards my on top of that inferno tower, and that means I can 1-shot all of them with that 1 single rage Sparky chain, which was absolutely nuts. Then once my Sparky finishes off the Raptor Rocket, I can send in my Eye Dragon to kill the enemy super. Once the enemy super is distracted, that raged Eye Dragon kills that thing so fast, and my Sparky is working her way deeper into the base before she finally goes down without grabbing another shot. But 6k on this first attack. I did not think this base would be possible, but maybe now it is with such a great first hit. So my original plan was to try to use a Graveyard Hog finish, because this blast bow was behind the peak and I could distract the rocket artillery's multi-mortars and all those defenses around it. I figured I could just graveyard snipe the backside blast bow, and then I could just Graveyard Hog spam the rest. But unfortunately, once I reached 51%, there was actually 2 Teslas that popped, so I got some more information and realized that I could not send in a graveyard back there. Otherwise, those Teslas just fizzle away my Larrys, and I'm not going to be able to grab that blast bow. So instead, I come in with a completely different plan. Depending on how far you get on the first hit, you can adjust your second hit accordingly, and I got so much that I completely exposed this left side Inferno Tower to send in a Golem straight in after it. So Haste Spell, Frost Spell, Giant, the tank, and then a Golem to go straight in after the Inferno Tower and take that thing out quickly. Once the Spirit Thrower locks on top of the Golem, a Hog Rider on top of this Wizard Tower, and use that Hog Rider to work its way left. Because the Golem is going to walk outside of range of the Spirit Thrower, I try to use a Ram to try to tank for the Spirit Thrower, but it actually pulls a Zap Trap, which is even better for me, and now the Golem is going to take out the cart. That Frostbow is doing such a great job, even after the Inferno Tower, to slow everything down. The Hog Riders now lock on top of the Giant Cannon, so those Hog Riders are doing some serious work. Once the Blastbow locks on top of my Golem, that means I'm free to drop down a Ram leaning towards the right side Frosted Rocket Artillery, and then use a Bard to try to snipe that thing down before it ever gets any more damage against any more of my troops. But you'll see my Golem is taking so much damage at this point, and so I'm going to have to use my last few Hog Riders, time them very well to stun and reset the peak for as long as possible. You can see, unfortunately, the Golem walks inside of range of that Tesla while he's going after the peak, and so he's taking a lot more damage than I was expecting, but the Hog Riders are providing some extra DPS to make sure the Golem gets through that peak a little bit faster, but it does get one last dying shot against my Golem, and my Golem is so low. The bow, the Tesla, is chipping away at it, and I thought he was going to die, but he survives and gets into the dead zone of the the Blastbow, and he takes that thing out. The Tesla had 2 more troops to take out before it was able to touch the Golem, and so the Golem at 1 HP, the Rock with 1 HP, and a Dream survives, and I am praying that there are no more Giant Bombs or even a small bomb left on the base, because I'm pretty sure a Gentle Breeze will take out this Golem from here. So at this point, we need the Golem to try to get through all the walls and try to take everything out. The minions I sent for the cannon again also got blown up by some more air traps. The Rams from earlier, you remember from tanking for the Hog Riders, gave me some Barbarians that pulls a bomb that saved my Golem to go for the very end, the last building, but there's a small bomb that kills the Golem, and his Death Bomb kills the final building on the base. This attack was so close, so clutch, and I can't believe I got this. So I actually faced a ton of corner peaks in this previous raid weekend, and so they're very hard for a lot of attackers, and that's why a lot of defenders choose to run bases like these with the peak in the very back. It's very annoying to try to approach that thing from all different angles because it snipes you the entire way through. But in this case, there is actually a dragon situated on the outside, meaning I can take that out on the first attack. If there are enemy troops on the outside that you can take out very cheaply on the first hit, always do that because they're very annoying on the second hit. But notice how the enemy super walked outside of range of my Eye Dragon, and then my Eye Dragon reset, and then the enemy super turned right back to snipe that thing. That was so unlucky. I had to expend my zap to reset the enemy super so I could still win that interaction, but unfortunately, I'm not looking too good anymore because I had to use 2 rages to get into this space. I want to enter from the far left hand side, and I need to use a rage through the Blastbow, otherwise it'll take me too long to get to it, as well as another rage deeper inside the base where there is so much Sparky rage chain value. But that also means I don't have a Frost Spell. If you don't have a Frost Spell, the defenses can retarget on top of your Sparky very quickly if you're not very good with your tanking, so I have to be very careful at this point because I have lost my Zap Spell. I cannot reset defenses anymore. I don't have a Hog Rider or anything like that. We just have to play things out. A Giant to tank on the approach, Barbarian to clear the trash in behind, a Ram to open up the wall into the base. But of course, what does the Blastbow lock onto? Of course my Sparky, but the Rage is going to allow my Sparky to take 2 shots and take out the enemy Blastbow, so not too big of a deal. We'll use 2 more Rams to open up the wall toward the Raid card to pull it in, so I can use a Sparky Rage Chain to kill the enemy card, but the bomb blows up my Barbarians, and then the other Blastbow locks onto my Sparky. And I am really regretting that I lost my Zap Spell at this point. I have to use a Rage Spell to send in my Sparky to one-shot the Giant Cannon as well as Rocket Artillery. I should have dropped down my last Giant to tank the Inferno Tower, but I was distracted trying to use a Rocket Balloon on top of the Spear Thrower. So my Sparky dies without getting another shot, so I have to throw in my last Giant and Ram, sadly, to get absolutely nothing. But you'll see why I brought the Rocket Balloon on this first attack. It was actually a big brain tactic and was the reason why I decided to come in from the very left-hand side of this base. And now, if you're going to try to finish off with a Sparky, which obviously you're going to come in with a Sparky, it's an 8.8k finish, you have a Rage Spell already down, and there is a ton of huge chain targets over here. So we're going to use a Frost Spell on the backside peak. You have to frost the peak on the corner like this. You don't really have a choice because otherwise it gets too many shots and it will kill your Sparky. You cannot tank the peak with any of your Giants. It will lock on top of your Sparky. And then we can also grab an Inferno Tower out of the deal, so it's not too bad. And then we'll just use some Giants to tank on the approach and some Sparky to try to chain through everything in the core of the base. So a Ram to tank the Blast Bow, a Giant to tank all the defenses, Sparky in behind another Giant, but somehow the Inferno Tower finds my Sparky of all things, but we have a Zap this time. So we are able to reset the Inferno Tower, kill it with some ram damage, and look at that. I killed the Spirit Thrower on the first attack with the Rocket Balloon, and now I can send a Rocket Balloon on top of this Blast Bow, and you can see how much damage that thing is going to do. Rage on top of the Giant Cannon to chain down everything in behind it, but the Rocket Balloon takes out the Blast Bow already. Eye Dragon on top of the peak while it's frosted up. The Rage Sparky is going to also assist with a Hog Rider to reset it, to make sure my Sparky does not take too much damage, but the Rocket Balloon is going to take out a Blast Bow, a Bomb Tower, a Crusher, a Cannon, a Bomb Tower, a Crusher, a Cannon. Oh my goodness, there is nothing that can touch that Rocket Balloon. That is what I saw before the first attack, and that is why I thought this base was still possible, even though it's a very hard corner peak. Sparky locks onto the Rapid Rocket, will chain down the air defense, will lock onto the other Rapid Rocket and take down the last air defense inside the base. Then I can use another Rocket Balloon to finish off the Spear Thrower, take out a Cannon, and my Rocket Balloons are invincible now. One finally does go down to a Zap Trap, but all of my Rocket Balloons, besides that one that died to the Zap Trap, survive to tell a tale, assist with cleanup. I have some Barbarians, some Rams to help assist with cleanup as well. A bunch of swag in the camp. So even though the first attack went atrociously wrong, that huge brain tactic with the Rocket Balloons was able to secure a sick peak 2-shot against another corner peak. And so not only were the capital peaks this week absolutely insane, I also had this ridiculous non-default Wizard Valley one-shot that I was not expecting to get against level 4 cannons and level 4 spear throwers, but let's see how we can still get this thing done, because I'm not the best at Wizard Valley non-default one-shots, but this attack was absolutely magical. Haste Rage leading into the base, a Giant to tank the Inferno Towers, Sparky Rage on top of the air bombs to one-shot everything. The Haste Flow will get my Sparky fast through the entire attack, and I need the Rage Flow right here at the very start. This is going to be a perfectly placed Rage, and you will see why, to give me a damage boost to get some critical Rage Sparky chain shells off. Sparky can actually one-shot this air bomb inside that Rage Flow, and then we'll move left and actually one-shot the Inferno Towers. So another Barbarian to continuously tank after the Giant will go down, and then that one Sparky chain, 2 Inferno Towers, a Cannon, a Speed Thrower, and then we'll use a Giant to pull the enemy cart in, and that is the other purpose of the Erase Spell, to one-shot the enemy cart just like that. Sparky locks on top of the Cannon, will chain out another Cannon, another Spear Thrower, and just continuously work her way closer into the base. Locks on top of the Wizard Tower, finishes off 2 Spear Throwers, a Barbarian on top of the final form of the Cannon cart, and so I can take that thing out and tank for the Spear Thrower and keep my Sparky healthy. My Sparky has taken out so many defenses already and is still quite healthy. I didn't know if she could actually reach the multi-cannon over the river, but she can, and so I use a Ram to tank and then a Zap to make sure my Sparky can one-shot the level 4 multi-cannon. Then Sparky locks onto the Tesla, chains down a Cannon, a Wizard Tower as well, a Giant to now move forward towards the left-hand side to tank for Sparky going towards the Spear Thrower, and then a Barb to open up the map for deployment. Things are going really crazy because the Sparky haste is so fast, so you have to know where Sparky is going and predict her pathing. She locks on top of the air bombs, so I try to use some ramps to open up the walls and try to chip down the air bombs so I can one-shot that thing with Sparky and save some time. But unfortunately, I'm not quick enough, and so my Sparky takes 2 shells against that anyways. But you can see I am traumatized. If you've seen my streams, you know how many non-default time fails I've gotten, so I am now in the business of trying to save every single possible second that is humanly feasible. And now Sparky is going to take out the Wizard Tower afterwards. The Barbs in behind are going to clear the trash and the map for deployment, and my Sparky is now going to shop around the outside and just chain down everything with a Barb on the outside to help support, a Barb on the top hand side to try to snipe the Spear Thrower, but unfortunately there was a Giant Bomb that kills my Barbarian, and so I'll actually have to backtrack for that at the very end. I was not paying attention up there because I'm focused on protecting my Sparky. My Sparky is already really low, but I still have 3 Rams, a Giant, as well as one last Barbarian to try to make sure my Sparky has enough juice in her to finish off those last few defenses. Another huge Sparky chain on top of the Spear Thrower will finish off a Cannon, as well as chip down the multi-cannon for a one-shot with a Barbarian to finish that thing off, and then tank the last Spear Thrower inside of the base. Sparky locks on top of the Wizard Tower, will finish that thing off, and then we'll finish off the Spear Thrower at the very end. We have taken out the space so quickly, and we'll have enough time to finish off the last Spear Thrower on the top hand side with 20 seconds left in the bank. And just like that, this is an absolutely crazy non-default one-shot. I did not expect to get it, but sometimes the raid is just working out for you. So now you do not actually always have to start off with a Sparky attack on the first hit. When the base calls for something else, the capital peak that is, sometimes you can go in with a completely different strategy. In this case, the defenses are super spaced out, the Sparky chains are pretty terrible, and Golem is going to get a lot more value with all these defenses super spaced out. But against this clan, I noticed that a lot of the traps were at the very start of the attack because they were trying to, I guess, trap miners or whatever on the approach and try to blow up all of your troops. So I suspect that there could be a ton of traps inside of this forest section between all of these walls where there's a lot of empty gaps, and I'm super sussed out. I think there could be zap traps, and so instead, normally you can use a golem to go straight through the walls and try to go after this cannon. I'm going to send the golem towards the cannon anyways, and so I can use him to break through the walls, but in this case, I'm going to use the ram to try to test for zap traps, test for any bombs. There are no bombs, but that was just a good precaution, and those barbarians are still going to give me a nice shielding against the cannon. So sometimes I try to mind games my enemies, use the earlier districts to try to give me clues about the peak and how it might be built. In this case, it didn't quite work out, but still, that's a nice thing to sometimes think about when all of the districts kind of look the same to you. And the Golem is now going to work his way in a Frost on top of the Inferno Tower, as well as the Rocket Artillery and the Cannon. And then we'll use a Ram and some Barbarians to try to get through the Bomb Tower and try to get to that Inferno Tower as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the Golem actually strays away from the Inferno Tower. I wanted the Golem to kill the enemy Giants and enemy Raid Cart, but it quite does not work out for me. I used the Zap to try to get through the Bomb Tower, but unfortunately that also retargets the Inferno Tower on top of my Barbarian. But then I'll use the Hog Rider to try to get through that Inferno Tower, and the Golem's just doing his own thing at this point. I don't know what he's doing. He's walking away from all the defenses and being a little bit pesky and walking towards the other Inferno Tower, which is the scariest part. I try to use the barrel to try to get through the enemy Raid Cart, but there's a Giant Bomb. So yeah. Things are not looking optimal for me. The Golem has strayed on me. It only takes one more Ram to finish off the Rocket Artillery after those Hog Riders did such a great job at beating through all the HP. And the Golem, he's just doing his own thing. He's chilling, taking a nighttime stroll. He's about to get in range of that Inferno Tower, so I'm going to use the rest of my troops. Do not let that Inferno Tower lock onto my Golem. I cannot get a Hog Rider. I do not have the angle to get it on top of that Inferno Tower, so I'm going to use all of my troops to try to make sure that Golem does not get ramped up against, and just like that, he finally walks away. He wants no business with that Inferno Tower. We'll deal with it another day. Golem will finish off all of those buildings on the very bottom of the base. I have one last Hog Rider in my camps, and I'm going to use that to make sure that the Inferno Tower is well distracted and make sure my Golem is going to be safe on his approach. I use the Hog Rider towards the right-hand side to avoid the dragon as much as possible. I'm not going to get the enemy Giants and enemy Raid Cart, which was what I was going for on the first attack, but I get the other Inferno Tower somehow, miraculously, and we are going to have to go back to the drawing board. Originally, I was going to go in with a double Golem hit, another Golem hit on the second attack, but I figured that at this point, I'm not going to be able to finish the space. All three of the enemy raid troops are still on the field. The backside is very nasty because the blast bow peak and the other blast bow, I can't freeze them all, and there's a huge wave of trash buildings that's going to slow down my Golem and make him take a ton more damage than I'm going to be comfortable with. And so in this case, I completely flipped the script. Once again, sometimes you just have to adapt and use a completely different plan than you were expecting. A Barbarian to try to chip through the Bomb Tower and try to pull the Dragon out a little bit closer. Another Barbarian because the first one fails. And then I'll use a Giant as well as an Inferno Dragon to kill the enemy Super and try to get through that before we drop down our graveyards and waste a ton of Larrys set to air balloons. And so now we drop down the graveyard once the enemy Super goes down, and I come in with the Graveyard Hogs because I noticed that I'm going to be able to take down a lot of the splash defenses on the very start, and the backside Blast Bow is going to be very awkward at taking out the Hog Riders because the Blast Bow splash radius is very terrible, and the peak slowdown is also going to be very difficult at taking down my Hog Riders. So my Hog Riders, as long as I can get through this entry, and I'll use a Ram to open up the wall, get those graveyards going, not going to go in to assassinate the Giant Cannons, Hog Riders on top of the Tesla as well as the Rocket Artillery, stun those things, and make sure my P.E.K.K.A is safe on the approach to take out the Giants afterwards. Then I'll use some more Hog Riders from the flanks, a Ram as well as 3 Barbarians to try to take out the enemy Raid Cart, and we're going to be able to take out all of the defenses on the very approach. And now it's just about the Blast Bows, it's just about the Spear Throwers and the Peak on the very backhand side of the base, and we have 4 more Rams as well as 3 more Hog Riders to try to take that all out, 2 multi-cannons, and we can use the Hog Gliders to try to stun and help take out. And my Hog Riders are all converging at the very end. We're going to make sure that we don't group up all my Hog Riders because that way, that would mean that the Peak can shoot all of them down. But that was the other advantage to taking a P.E.K.K.A on this hit because the Peak is attracted to high HP targets, and that means it will focus on my P.E.K.K.A instead of the Hog Riders. So we'll use the Hog Riders to sneak inside the dead zones of the blast bows that just they're so terrible at taking out graveyard spam and Hog Riders, and that's why I went with it. And those Hog Riders are going to beat through that peak with one last Hog Rider to stun the peak and make sure that it does not get too much damage on top of all of my troops. The Spear Thrower survives on 1 HP. The peak gets one last shell against my troops, and I was so scared at this point. I thought everything was going to die as it converged to that Rapid Rocket, but thank God some of the Hog Riders fanned out and the P.E.K.K.A had enough HP to survive and take out the last couple buildings on this amazing peak 2-shot without Sparky at all. And one last peak, the way I usually start peaks that have a ton of trash buildings at the very start that's not being protected by any defenses, I either go with archers or minions, depending if there's air defenses or ground target defenses in the way. In this case, there's a bunch of air defenses, and we can actually just use those archers, which have longer range, to DPS down all these buildings. There's also a ton of traps, which is why I like to split the archers so they go in different directions, and if even just one dies and pulls a trap, some others can survive. A log trap, a bomb have been pulled by the archers, so we still have 2 alive. A barbarian to also help clear the trash up the right hand side, and we'll give them all the time that we need to go up the right hand flank, because I want to go in straight directly after the blast bow and rock artillery. I noticed that there is a rock artillery border as well as giant cannon within a wizard chain distance of the peak, so I want to set up a wizard bomb on the first hit with a Sparky to go in and try to chain down all of these high value splash threats. These defenses don't do too much damage to Sparky, but they would be lethal to Hog Riders, so taking them out on the first hit, especially those crushers, would be extremely nice. So we'll use those giants, those rams, to tank for Sparky and make sure she's safe, but we do want her to die because we are coming in with a Pinata instead. You don't always have to commit all your spells to keeping Sparky alive and try to get her pushing through the base. Sometimes you can use graveyards instead, because the graveyards are more valuable on the second attack. If I were to use a rage spell, that means that the rage spell would not do anything on the second hit. Dropping on the outside means that I can't get any more value off the rage spell, but those Larrys from the graveyards are always going to be valuable on the second hit. We'll let the Sparky die from here because we are actually running out of time. Then we'll use our graveyards on top of the Wizard Tower, on top of the Inferno Towers, use the Hog Rider to then stun the Wizard Tower to pull all of those traps to get those Hog Riders safe on the approach. Barb to snipe the enemy. Tessa also pulls a Zap Trap Hog Riders to collapse all of those defenses, especially that Inferno Tower. With the Frost Bell on top of the Inferno Tower, on top of the peak, my Sparky was safe, my Graveyard Larrys were able to overwhelm the base and also deal a ton of damage inside of the base, and we get a ton of defenses down after the Sparky dies. You cannot always commit to your Sparky, because even if I spent a couple more spells, I would have only gotten a couple more defenses, but with the Graveyards, with the Hog Riders, I was able to get a ton of defenses up the right-hand flank instead, which was a lot more valuable in securing a lot of potential for a 2-shot against this base. But once again, sometimes you have to go away from your original plan. If I did try to go in with the Wizard Bomb against the peak, I would have to commit a couple of packs of archers to finish off the bomb tower and the defenses inside the way. Also, the backside is just way too nasty with wizards. The giant cannon, bomb tower, multi-mortar wizard tower on the bottom hand flank is way too expensive to get through, as well as the backside blast though, the Inferno Tower. That's going to be very nasty if I have no more spells left in my camp, meaning once again, when all hope is lost, it's time for the rock. Go in down on the south side where there's not too much single target damage. I can use the golem to get through the bomb tower, get through the spear thrower, giant cannon, and all those defenses that are not inside the frost belt. I drop down a second frost on top of the rock artillery, Tesla, spear thrower, all those defenses that could be shooting at my golem once I'm entering the peak range. And then, once the peak locks onto top of my golem, I notice the other reason I go in with golem against this peak is that all the air defenses around the peak are rapid rockets, meaning they are short range. We can take out all of the buildings on the top hand side, then use an Inferno Dragon to snipe the enemy peak. Some rams to get through the walls to try to get through the cannon on the flank to take that thing out and make sure my golem doesn't take too much damage on the flank. We have to keep the golem alive through the backside to get through the blast blade, get through the Inferno Tower, and all of those defenses for a 2-shot, meaning that we have to keep up his HP now. Eye Dragon on top of the peak to snipe it while the golem is tanking those shells. A Zap spell on standby. I want to save the Zap spell for the backside Inferno Tower because that is extremely nasty to my golem, but I figure the golem is taking way too much damage. He's already at half HP, meaning I'll use the Zap to reset the rock artillery, reset the peak, so he takes a little bit less fire against those defenses. But like I said, he's getting very low at this point. iDrag gets through the enemy heap, and then will also assist on the Giant Cannon as Golem swerves less, so that iDragon is just getting so much value here. Once the Golem takes the aggro of the Blast Bill, we'll use a Barb to get through the trash buildings, speed up the Golem towards the back inside of the base. A Ram to tank for the Inferno Tower also pulls a Zap Trap, so we can get an angle on top of the Inferno Tower with the Hog Glider. That Hog Rider is going victoriously towards the Inferno Tower. My iDragons are still alive. I drop another one to help take out the enemy super once the iDragons have an angle on them, but that Hog Rider takes the aggro of the cannon cart, meaning the Golem gets pulled towards the cart, gets zapped down by the Inferno Tower, but the iDragons have finished off the blast, so the Golem Death Bomb kills the Inferno Tower. Larrys are converging on the last couple of buildings, and just like that, the Golem dies, but his sacrifice was once again not in vain as we secure another insane 2-shot against this peak. And one last beautiful corner peek 2-shot to end off the video. This time the dragon is in the dead middle, but I noticed I can use a Ram to test for any Zap Traps, Rocket Balloon to get through the Spear Thrower and get through the Giant Cannon. Also, that Ram pulls 2 log traps, so bonus value there. But for 20 camp space, I get 2 logs, a Spear Thrower, a Giant Cannon outside of range of any air defenses. That will always be worth it. Giant to go in to tank the cannon, Sparky to go in to chain down the cannon, Barbs in behind to clear the trash buildings. Once again, all standard stuff when you're going in with a peak Sparky. Always clear the map for deployment. Otherwise, if you can't drop your troops in front of your Sparky gets locked onto. Basic knowledge, but now we'll use a Frostbow on top of the Rocket Artillery, on top of the Inferno Tower, on top of the Blast Bow. Freeze up all those defenses. Make sure they can't shoot at my Sparky too fast because I only want to bring 1 Erase Spell. I'm trying to greed so the Frostbow can also cover the Dragon later on into the attack. And with only 1 Erase Spell, that means I have to drop it deeper inside the base. I can't use it for the Crusher, so I'm going to slowly get through the Crusher and slowly work my way closer into the base. Now we'll use some Rams to tank, open up the walls, and then we'll use one last Giant to try to make sure my Sparky, now with the Raise Spell, can absolutely tear through the base. So you have to be very careful when the enemy super is inside the base. There are so many air defenses in all different directions, and that's why we have the barrel in the camp. So we'll use a barrel and iDragon to go after the enemy super, but I inted. I had to wait a little bit longer so I could directly target the enemy super with my iDragon, but unfortunately I was impatient and my iDragon gets blown up by those air defenses, but luckily still I'm able to get a Rage Chain on top of the Inferno Tower, kill the enemy raid cart, and then my Sparky survives a tiny bit longer to get 1 more shot against the Rapid Rocket, get a bunch of damage on all these buildings. Now, the enemy dragon has lost its post, meaning that it can fly anywhere on the map. There was 1 barbarian that survived from earlier that was clearing trash all the way around base, and that will pull the dragon outside, and that will help me immensely on the second attack. I was planning to finish off with another Sparky, but I noticed that once again, I think Golem is the right call here. I've been using a lot of Golem finishes. I normally don't do this. I normally go in with a ton more Sparky and a ton less Golem, but sometimes the Rock can pull through. The Rock can be magical, and we're going to use a Ram, a iDragon to kill the enemy super. Use the Ram from far away to pull the Dragon out a little bit further so we can directly target that super this time, and so my iDragon does not get distracted. Use the iDragon at an angle to make sure that the super does not fly outside of range. Haste Spell leading to the base. We'll use a Barb to kill the trash building, so then once again, just like on the first attack, we have an angle towards that Inferno Tower immediately. iDragon on top of the peak to distract while the peak is distracted on my Golem. And the reason why I go in with Golem instead of Sparky is because, once again, if you're going to go in with Sparky against a corner peak, you have to freeze the peak. If we freeze the peak on this base, that means that we can freeze literally no other defense, and so that is a not money freeze. Instead, we get a huge freeze on Blast Bow, Rocket Artillery, and then Inferno Tower, and instead go in with Golem, use a Rocket Balloon on the bottom side to get the Spear Thrower, and once again, I identified that that Rocket Balloon gets so much value killing the cannon in behind. The iDragon also finishes off the bomb tower before he finally goes down, but we have taken out a ton of the big threats of the Golem on the base. A lot of the defenses are now frost up. Rocket Balloon is slowly chipping his way through all of the HP on that cannon. We have a Barbarian, we have a Hog Rider still left. This was a mistake by me. I should have used my Zap Spell on top of the Rocket Artillery. That was my best chance to use it, because at this point the Zap Spell is wasted and I have nowhere else to use it. The Zap Spell can allow the Golem to one-shot the Rocket Artillery, also reset the Rocket Artillery to make sure it does less damage to my Golem, but now there's literally nowhere else I could really get value off of it, and so that was a small mistake by me, but there's really nothing left on the base that can stop the Golem. The Giants are behind the post without a fence, meaning they were stuck there until the Golem beat through the wall, and once they were able to attack the Golem, it was far too late, and that's another sick peak 2-shot. I don't know what happened this week, but it was absolutely magical. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed today's attacks. Make sure you join the Clan Capital Discord server if you still have not yet already. What are you doing? It's the place to go if you want to get better at the Clan Capital, but make sure you also like and subscribe if you did enjoy today's video, and take care.